Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakans Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchena Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhana Sudha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapa Turvyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivastadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 10, The Deliverance of the Amala Arjun Trees, text number 18. Sadhunam Samachitanam Mukunda Charannaishitanam Upekshai Kim Dana Stambar Asadvir Asad Ashrayai Sadhunai Nam Samachitanam Mukunda Charanai Shisam Upekshai Kim Danastambair Asadvir Asad Ashrayai Charanai Shinam Upekshai Kim Danastambair Asadvir Asad Ashrayai Saranam Samachitanam Naishita. Ladies. Saranam Samachitanam Mukunda Charanai Shinam Sadvir Asadvi Asat Ashranai Sadhunam of saintly persons Samachitanam of those who are equal to everyone Mukunda Charana Aishinam whose only business is to serve Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and who always aspire for that service. Upekshai, neglecting the association. Kim, what? Dana Stambai, rich and proud, Asadbi, with the association of undesirable persons, Asat Ashrai, taking shelter of those who are asat or non-devotees. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Saintly persons, sadhus, think of Krishna 24 hours a day. They have no other interest. Why should people neglect the association of such exalted spiritual personalities and try to associate with materialists, taking shelter of non-devotees, most of whom are proud and rich? Purport. A sadhu is one who is engaged in devotional service to the Lord without deviation. Bhajate mam ananyabhak. Tidikshava karunika surida sarvadehinam ajata shatava shanta sarva sarubhushanam. The symptoms of a sadhu are that he is tolerant, merciful, and friendly to all living entities. He has no enemies. He is peaceful. He abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. The Bhagavatam 3:25-21. A sadhu is surida, sarvadehinam, the friend of everyone. Why then should the rich, instead of associating with sadhus, waste their valuable time in association with other rich men who are averse to spiritual life? Both the poor man and the rich man can take advantage of the Krishna consciousness movement, and here is advised that everyone do so. There is no profit in avoiding the association of the members of the Krishna consciousness movement. Narottam Das Thakur has said, Asat Sangatyadi Kainayo Asat Asate Vilasa Te Karne Lagila Ye Karma Bandha Pansa. If we give up the association of sadhus, saintly persons, engage in Krishna consciousness, and associate with persons seeking sense gratification and accumulating wealth for this purpose, our life is spoiled. The word asat refers to a Vaishnava, one who is not a devotee of Krishna, and sat refers to a Vaishnava, Krishna's devotee. One should always seek the association of Vaishnavas and not spoil one's life by mixing with Avaishnavas. In Bhagavad Gita 7:15, the distinction between Vaishnava and Avaishnava is enunciated. Namam diskritino buddha prapadyante naradama maya pritigyana gyan asram bhavam ashritya. One who is not surrendered to Krishna is a most sinful person, diskritin, a rascal, mudha, and the lowest of men, a naradama. Therefore one should not avoid the association of Vaishnavas, which is now available all over the world in the form of the Krishna consciousness movement. So the verse again, sadhunam sarvachitanam mukunda charanai shinam upekshai kim dana stambar asadvir asad ashrayai. Saintly persons, sadhus, think of Krishna 24 hours a day. They have no other interest. Why should people neglect the association of such exalted spiritual personalities, try to associate with materialists, taking shelter of non-devotees, most of whom are proud and rich? Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatam Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskyadyade Satarane. To understand why we should associate with devotees, we should theoretically understand what our position is. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Anadidvam niragunadvat paramatmayam aviyam sharira stopikantiya nakaroti nanalipyate. That those who can see with the eyes of eternity can see that the soul is eternal, transcendental, and beyond the modes of material nature. Despite contact with the material body or Arjuna, the soul is neither entangled nor is he doing anything. Although to our conditioned understanding of things, we think we're doing so many things. To think that we're simply observing, not only observing but also desiring. In other words, as living beings, as living souls, we have the capacity to desire, and we desire according to what our observations are. Observations mean our experience. For instance, if your hand is in the fire, then the soul will feel it. And the natural inclination is desire that it be taken out of the fire, if possible. Now the soul is not being burnt, but his consciousness is being affected by the fact that he's associating with the hand which is in a fire. And therefore he's understanding that experience as being pain, and therefore he naturally desires that it be taken out. And therefore, by Krishna's arrangement, through the material nature, he fulfills that desire and it's taken out. Krishna reciprocates with the desire, and the desire depends upon the strength of the desire. So the soul's thinking, feeling, and willing. So when the soul comes to the platform of such a strong desire, then Krishna, according to the laws of material nature, fulfills those desires more easily than just by thinking. In Kali Yuga, just by thinking about something, we don't get the karmic reaction for it. Feeling is more intense, and willing is the most intense. So in the spiritual world, we also think, we also feel, and we will. And in this world, we also think, feel, and will. That's the nature of the soul. Now, what we think about, what we feel about, what we will, in the material world, there's three choices in general. Sattva, Rajas, Tamayiti, Guna, Prakriti, Sambhava, Ivanandi, Mahabaho, Dehe, Dehinam, Avyam. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, ignorance. And when the spirit soul comes in contact with those modes, he becomes conditioned by them. So we have three general flavors: goodness, passion, ignorance. And therefore, according to our according to Purusha Prakriti Stohi Bhungte Prakriti Jangunai Karna Guna Sangosya Sat Asat Yoni Janmasu. Thus the living entity follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with those modes, thus he meets with both good and evil amongst the various species. In other words, the Sangha, association. The most intense association is mental association. Whatever we're actually thinking about, and depending upon the absorption in that thought, that's even more of an association than even sometimes physical association. Although physical association and mental association, they follow each other, but even without physical association, mental association is very intense, because the mind is more subtle, and therefore it's closer to the soul. Just like the most intense part of our material experience is our false ego. The thing that's most sensitive to ourselves is not the gross or subtle body. It's not even our minds. It's not even our conceptions. It's not even our mood. It's our false ego in the material world. Similarly, when we identify ourselves as Krishna's servants, to the extent that we do, then we have clearer opportunity to decide or we have an opportunity to more clearly decide which we want to choose, which thoughts we want to choose to fulfill. Krishna will supply intelligence, but not everything Krishna is supplying, not all our mental desires we necessarily fulfill, otherwise we'd be really in trouble. Therefore, not everything we're simply flowing through our mind, we strongly will to fulfill. Although under the influence of intoxication or bad habits, we may fulfill certain desires which ordinarily or previously or by proper education we wouldn't fulfill. We wouldn't put our will into, we could say. So we have to see there's ignorance, and generally speaking, at least for those in goodness, ignorance doesn't have a very good reputation. Similarly, passion doesn't have a very good reputation for those of goodness, and for those in passion, sometimes ignorance or goodness doesn't have a good reputation either. Therefore, Krishna says that Rajas tamas chabi bhuya sattvam bhavati bharata sattvam rajas tatastaiva tamas sattvam rajas tata. Sometimes the mode of goodness defeats the mode of ignorance and passion, and sometimes the mode of passion defeats ignorance and goodness, and sometimes passion defeats ignorance and goodness. And this way there's always a competition for supremacy. So we were born, when we took birth, the body was made of the three modes. It's a product of the three modes. And that's because our mind was in the three modes, a combination of the three modes, generally speaking. Unless, like Shukadeva Goswami, we were born in Brahman. So, those three modes influence us, and we have a taste. Everyone who's taken this gross body, according to our mental disposition at the time of death, we've gotten a body and has certain tastes. Human form of life, there's an opportunity to develop a higher taste, but if you get the body of a hog, or a dog, or a tiger, then you're conditioned by that taste. There's no way out of it. But human beings, they can get a higher taste. Of course, if you're born in a certain culture, by association, it's not by chance you were born in that culture, and generally speaking, you're going to have a taste for this same thing that the people have a taste for in that culture. Because from the moment of birth, practically speaking, by association, you develop certain habits. To the extreme, like for instance, now in the Western world, people, as they become degraded into the modes of nature, their habits generally become degraded too. For instance, 50 years ago, if you would have told people that there would be advertising to eat insects, you think that's ridiculous. Why would anyone in the Western world want to eat insects? But now that because people have degraded and they're making propaganda to eat insects, it's not, for some people, it's not so unusual to buy a bag of insect flour, grasshopper flour. Because we're isolated or insulated, whatever, to us it seems ridiculous. If they told you, here's a chapati, it's made out of a combination of three flours, cockroach, ant, and grasshopper. We probably wouldn't be very much interested in eating chapatis that day. Hopefully. But people are becoming conditioned like that because they're entering into the lower modes of nature by their habits, and therefore that's what they're acquiring a taste for. If a pig eats stool, he doesn't think this is disgusting. Can you give me some halva? The pig thinks this is delicious. give me some more. I'll take seconds. But a human being, naturally, if he's not completely in the mode of ignorance, then he'll enjoy something like nice puris with cooked in ghee, nicely cooked. So that depends upon the modes that we're being pushed by. And the modes give us a certain taste. After all, everything has some taste. So if you're conditioned by the lower species of life, then you have a taste for the lower things in life. And if you're conditioned by the higher things in life, you have a taste for the higher things in life. And if you're transcendental, then you have a taste for transcendental things, for Krishna Prasadam, things in relationship to Krishna. So everything depends upon association. Association is very subtle. Everything we look at, everything we smell, everything we hear, everything we touch is a product of the three modes. It was made out of the three modes. We may not see the three modes, but it was formed from the consciousness of someone, some living entity in the modes of material nature. And therefore it's infused with those modes. And the two things that affect us the most is what we hear. Of course, what we see also affects us, but we only see according to what we hear. We understand things according to what we hear. If we see things in relation to Krishna, then we're not so much affected by it. And if we see things in relation to ignorance, or passion, or even goodness, then we become conditioned by it. Of course, what we eat also affects us, but that depends upon what our understanding, what we're eating, our consciousness, our understanding. Prahlad Maharaj was fed poison, but he offered it to Krishna, and therefore it became like nectar. Therefore, how we eat and the consciousness we eat will determine, is the biggest factor, but of course, what we eat is also important, because as conditioned souls, we're not likely to find everything is in relation, think of everything in relation to Krishna, and eat everything as Krishna's mercy. Therefore, we eat things that are offered to Krishna, and then we can understand that this is Krishna's mercy. So the point is, association is very important. And here it says, association with devotees who are always thinking about Krishna can help us come to the platform of getting a taste for thinking about Krishna. Like Narada Muni, he was just seemingly a regular, ordinary son of a maidservant, but because of association with the Bhaktivedantas during the rainy season and taking their remnants of prasadam and hearing them when he was serving them, he developed a taste for Krishna Katha, which helped him associate with Krishna, who's a purifying agent for everyone. Krishna purifies everyone. It's by association with Krishna, either by eating his prasadam, or remembering him by hearing his instructions, how everything and everyone is related to him, or chanting Hare Krishna, or serving him. We get Krishna's association. And that association is the most purifying. It can take us from ignorance, passion, and goodness. And therefore, as we come to the platform of pure goodness, then our natural qualities are manifested. The soul's natural qualities, which means the soul will naturally simply desire to serve Krishna. He'll have a taste for associating with Krishna and to serve Krishna. And that will manifest in his activities and his thoughts and everything else. It is not that the soul at any time becomes a doer, but when he only desires to serve Krishna, then the internal energy of Krishna, Yogamaya, makes all the arrangements for his service as an instrument for Krishna. Therefore, yasyatma buddhi, yasyatma buddhi kunapeti radhika. That's wrong too. Yasyasta bhakti bhagavata kenchana savar gunas tatra samasate gora hara bhaktasi kuto mahagunan manorate nasati davato vahi. That one who's actually a servant of Krishna, who's desiring simply to utilize things in Krishna's service, yasyatma buddhi yasyatma buddhe kunate yasyatma buddhi yasyatma. How does that go? Oh, no, that's not the one. Yasyatma, about the good qualities, one requires all the good qualities. Yasyasti bhaktir. So instead of yasyatma, it's yasyasti bhaktir. Bhagavata kinchana savar gunas tatra samasute sura. That one who's engaged in Krishna service, then his activities become just as Krishna's activities. And Krishna is all good, so everything Krishna he does is all good. As Krishna is good, so whatever one does on behalf of Krishna becomes good also. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana, and bhakti means love for Krishna. So Krishna loves everyone, and anything does under Krishna's direction is for everyone's benefit, because Krishna only does things for everyone's benefit. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana, but one has to be devoid of material desire, akinchana. If we mix up Krishna's desire with our conditioned desires, then it's not so good, as good. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana savara gunas tatra samasute sura. Then, if you put the iron in the fire, then it gets hotter and hotter and hotter, and eventually it becomes like fire. So, constant association with Krishna, his name, form, associates, his quality and his pastimes, either internally, thinking about Krishna's activities in Vrindavan, or externally, here, engaging in the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Then the result is that one acquires all the good qualities of the demigods by association with Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. Savar gunas tatra samasate sura. But on the other hand, if one is not a devotee, yasyasti bhaktir bhagavata kinchana savar gunas tatra samasate gura hara bhaktasi kuto mahagunan, then if one associates with the material qualities, even goodness, but especially ignorance and passion, then the result is manorite dasati davato vahi. One may infuse within ignorance and passion some appearance of transcendental or even goodness, but actually it's just a show. Internally, one is actually, his desires are for ignorance and passionate, and therefore one will only be able to stay on that platform temporarily, appearing to be good, but actually, because he's devoid of Krishna consciousness, it's like the spark out of the fire. He may put on a big show of glowing for a little while, but eventually he'll go out. He can't really be independent of the fire and glow. So anyone who's glowing outside of Krishna consciousness, we can understand it's only temporary. It's only due to previous association with the fire, and now he's still glowing, but that glow will go out in a very short period of time. Similarly, if we're not glowing, we should jump into the fire, and then we'll start glowing, the fire of Krishna consciousness. And it's not that the spark is out of the fire and he's become disqualified from jumping into the fire. He's a bad spark, you're a bad spark, you're outside the fire, you're always going to be outside the fire. Don't get it too close to the fire. The fire will burn you. No, the spark, his duty is to jump back into the fire and start glowing again, and then tell everyone about how nice and warm it is in the fire. And not take the propaganda that you can be happy and satisfied and glow outside the fire. And it's the association of devotees who are glowing that we become inspired to glow also. And the association of the materialists who are putting out a little show of glowing outside of Krishna consciousness, then we think maybe I can glow too without Krishna. and then we go out along with them. They'll go out shortly, and we'll go out also with them. So I'll stop there thinking. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you for the wonderful class. I have a question. We cannot escape the influence. How to associate properly with other devotees, especially with advanced devotees?
Well, we could definitely escape the influence of the material modes. That's what we're here for. Otherwise, how are we here if you can't escape the influence? But we have to add Krishna consciousness. At least we have to add the theoretical knowledge that's in the scripture, see through the eyes of scripture, and then according to whatever we can understand from scripture is stimulated, try to desire, act according to that. And then Krishna will help us make more advancement. And the more advanced we are, the more we're aloof from the modes of nature. The more we maintain our Krishna consciousness, mam chayo vyabhicharyena bhakti-yogena sevate sagunan samatiti brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who's engaged in full devotional service and failing without failure. One engaged in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature and comes to the level of Brahman. So devotional service, the more continuously we do it, the more enthusiastically we do it, the more Krishna helps us to escape the modes of material nature. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Hare Krishna. So you mentioned, and I am thinking if I understand properly, that Prahlad Maharaj offered poison to Krishna. Yes?
Yes, of course.
Yes. So I'm thinking he didn't know that this sweet rice was poison.
Well, whatever he got, he offered to Krishna.
Offered to Krishna without desire to enjoy, just offer to Krishna.
Yes, of course. Prahlad Maharaj had no other desire than to please Krishna.
So, and second question, you mentioned demigods. So we have materialistic demigods, and also in spiritual world are demigods. So if you clear it.
Well, generally speaking, the demigods, I don't know which ones you're referring to, but the real demigods, like Indra and his followers, they all are generally in the quality of goodness. They have good qualities. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're referring to, because that's...
Okay. Thank you.
They follow... Demigods means one who follows Krishna, so they develop good qualities, the demigods. That's why they're demigods.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Indra wouldn't be in charge of the rain. He's a very, responsible personality.
Yeah. In Brihad Bhagavad Gita is mentioned that demigods, that they are in spiritual world, also demigods.
Yeah, everything is in the spiritual world. Like and the Maharaj worships Lord Narayan there, and also there's demigods. His brother Govardhan worships Durga, but she's a devotee. Of course, even here, Durga is a devotee of Krishna. She's an expansion of Srimati Radharani.
Yes, thank you.
Anything else? Kvala Grantaraj Srimad-bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.